Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Town Hall for incoming graduate students. This is our second or third Town Hall where we've reached out to you and asked you to join us for this meeting so we can answer some of your questions. We know you're all very concerned about plans for the fall. We also recognize that many of you have sent us emails, and sometimes it takes us a little while to get back to you because we have been receiving such a huge number of inquiries. So this format, we hope, will be able to provide you some information that you're looking for. I do hope you're all doing okay in this really crazy, unprecedented times. And so we're also hoping that you'll be able to get to Stanford this year and join us. So before I go any further, let me introduce the Bechtel team who's here. I'm Shalini Bhutani. I'm the director of the Bechtel International Center. Joining us here from the Bechtel team is Sean Stafford, Junko Perry, Myok Chung, Mario Mihalchik, Priya Chandrakar, Hannah Cho, and then we have Elsa Gontram. Rolando, did I already introduce you? And Rolando Villalobos.
Yeah.
So this is the team that you will get to know really well. We are here to work with you during your entire time at Stanford, and you should feel free to reach out to us as your needs arise. So going back to the big issue on everybody's mind is the visa issue. And before I go any further, my colleagues are reminding me that when you have questions, please do not put them in the chat box. Please put them in the Q&A box. And make sure that you wait until we have all spoken and given you some information. You might hear some information here that already answers some of your questions. So visa issues. While we understand that US embassies and consulates around the world are beginning to reopen, albeit really slowly, there is the big concern about whether students will be able to get visa appointments and actually get to Stanford in time for the start of fall quarter, which for most students this year is September 14th. So, you know, not too far from now. What we do know is that the Department of State is looking to grant visas to international students in and J F and J status. What we do not know yet is what the Department of Homeland Security is thinking about new students coming to the US. So just so you know, there are two bodies involved in your being able to get to the United States. One is the Department of State. The Department of State issues your visas. The Department of Homeland Security actually allows you to enter the United States. And at this point, these two bodies are not working hand in hand. We're waiting for guidance from the Department of Homeland Security, and we hope to receive it soon. When we do, we will update you. We'll send you an email. We'll post information on our website. And of course, we will be continuing these regular weekly town halls, most probably same day, same time every week, but we will confirm for you. Some of you have asked about the possibility of getting expedited visas and have then asked your departments to issue those letters for you. Please know that the Department of State has told us that they will try and entertain those letters, but their staffing levels are not at a level where they could consider all your applications. So go ahead and request expedited visa interviews, but know that the Department of State will try, but cannot promise that they'll be able to consider your requests. And finally, I have one more point to bring up, which is the funding issue. I know many of you have written us about how and whether you'll continue to be paid your RA ships and your TA ships if you're outside the country. please know that the university is looking into that issue, trying to find creative ways that they will be able to pay students who are overseas, but there are no guarantees yet. You will probably hear or have already heard that there is a bank on campus, the SFCU, that is looking to allow international students to open their bank accounts before they get to the United States and without making an initial deposit. That information will be coming to you in detail. So now I'm going to turn this over to my good friend, Rolando Villalobos. Rolando?
Yes. I will take any type of questions. We will do the Q&A, not the chat. And then what's going to happen is maybe between all of us, our colleagues will respond. I can probably respond to quite a few of the questions. And Junko, if you unmute yourself, can you tell me what you see right now as far as any questions? Or is there any pattern of any question, maybe eventually that even Mario, you can see?
Sure, I can read some of the questions that we are receiving. If the DHS does not permit new students to enter, as you mentioned, we mentioned, does that only apply to a school that online programs, or it also applies to hybrid program students as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, right now we are considered, for now, a hybrid school, but we're still waiting. There's still some little bit of confusion going on, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer on trying to fine tune the answer to that question. I'm not sure, Charlene, you want to pitch in on this? But
yeah. So our recommendation at this point is that if you can get a visa appointment and get a visa, please go ahead and do so. Don't hold off doing that. We are suggesting that students not buy their airline tickets quite yet. We understand that tickets get more expensive the longer you wait, but until we get clearer guidance from the Department of Homeland Security, and just in case Stanford has to change its hybrid model to an online model, that might impact your ability to enter. I know this is difficult news to get, but that's the only thing we can recommend at this point.
yeah, on a positive side, we are starting to hear students that are getting appointments.
Yes.
And I've heard of one just yesterday that was able to get an appointment relatively fast, actually.
Yeah.
And so we're waiting to hear about the visa, but you know, if you can try to get a visa, you try it. And then if for some reason you can't enter, at least you have the visa and the passport. That doesn't expire, okay? A visa, go ahead.
And the other thing is that once you have a visa stamp in your passport, you can enter, if not in the fall, then hopefully in the winter quarter. And you should also know that you can enroll for classes remotely and start your academic program even if you are not able to get to campus. We understand that there are all sorts of issues about timing, you know, how inconvenient it is to take classes at midnight. We also understand that there's some issues that students might have about their internet connections, but the university is promising to allow students to enroll for classes remotely if they need to.
Yeah. All right. What other, Mario?
This is an employment question. A student wants to know, for all students who are starting remotely for the fall quarter, do they have to leave their full-time jobs since they won't be under visa restrictions?
Oh, that's a nice question. I can actually say you're lucked out. So you want to do two things at the same time, which I normally would not advise you to do, work and go to school. But you're not in F1 status, so you're not subject to the F1 regulations. But your priority, I'm going to just bluntly tell you, should be Stanford. But what you do is your business. And so, yeah, you could do their first quarter outside of Stanford. And if you don't want to interrupt your employment, that's your business. But try to take advantage of Stanford while you're a student. You're going to be able to work the rest of your life. But if you think it's so important for you to work, that's your decision to make. Okay.
Can I answer one question really quickly? It's a question regarding bank accounts, and the student is saying, what if we already have an account at an American bank? Do we need to open one at the Stanford Bank? No, you do not need to open a second bank account just because it's a Stanford account. If you have a US bank account, that is sufficient.
Yep.
So this student would like to know, can he travel to, or she can travel to a third country for F1 visa application if the visa center in the country is closed?
Yeah, this one I'm gonna answer partially, and I'm gonna ask Elsa to step into. So this is known as the third country national situation, where you go to another country other than your home country to request a visa to enter the US. And there is no guarantee that you can get the visa at another country. So logistically, you have to figure, can you enter that country? And then the other question is, how long is it going to take for them to issue the visa? And can you stay there long enough? Okay. Several years back, I had a Chinese student that went across the US border into Mexico, south of San Diego, California. And he thought it was just going to be a 1 week thing. And it turned out into a several months thing. And I used to joke with a student in Spanish. He started learning Spanish, by the way. So he was there so long. So be very careful about this, because this plan might not work out after all. Elsa, do you have any other point to make on this too?
So we recognize that some consulates and embassies around the world, because of the COVID situation, are not going to be reopening anytime soon. So you may feel like you have no choice in the matter but to go to a third country. But as Rolando says, there are risks involved with making that decision to do that. The other option is to try to weigh your risks in the current circumstances and determine whether it would be better off for you just to stay in your home country and enroll remotely. So what we don't want you all to feel is this feeling of desperation about getting a visa for this fall quarter. Yeah. And that there is always another quarter to enter the United States and participate in Stanford as graduate students in the future. So if it doesn't work this fall for you, then you should consider entering at a later time.
Let me throw in a little angle on this question or issue. You may have a B1 or B2 tourist visa, or be part of a country that allows entry to the US under some sort of tourist status. Do not ever enter in tourist status to come and study at Stanford University, period. So if you think, oh, I have a valid visa on my passport, I'll just go in and then I'll change my status later. It's not that easy. Don't do that, okay? Unless you like excitement, but I'm telling you, do not do that. Do not enter on a tourist visa at any time while you're an F1 student or even prior to becoming a student. So don't see it as an easy ticket to enter the country, okay?
I think there are a lot of questions. Let's see if we can go through them quite quickly. Junko, are you reading them?
There's two questions that I'm going to combine. Student is confused about if DHS is allowing students to enter the US from the Shenzhen area, why is there uncertainty about being able to enter the US? And then also, what should a student do if they're denied entry, even if they have a valid F1 and an I-20?
Yeah, if you're denied F1 entry, they'll put you right back on the plane. When you exit deboard an airplane, you haven't been accepted yet to the United States, although you physically landed in the United States. It's the Customs Border Protection, the branch of the Department of Homeland Security that admits you into the United States. And they have to, well, they don't have to, they don't feel like it. If they don't think it's correct, they won't let you in. And if they don't let you in, they'll put you right back on the plane. And the airline company is going to be super upset with you because they thought that you were going to be admitted to the United States, and they will charge you one of the highest airline tickets that you will ever see, by the way, to go back to your country. There will be a notation in the record in the Immigration Service database or databases that you were denied entry and that you agreed to return home.
Yeah, just in terms of the second part of that question, the COVID travel ban to the Schengen zone and the UK and Ireland was not imposed by DHS. It was imposed by the Department of State. And I know it's complicated, but now that's been lifted. And so you, for certain travelers only, and F1s are certain travelers, and J1s still have to apply to the local embassy or consulate for permission to enter the United States. So it is a Department of State ban that's been lifted, not a Department of Homeland Security. I know it's complicated, but that's the way it's working.
Yeah, yesterday I had a student that asked me a similar question, and I went, she's from Hungary, and I went and looked at the US Embassy's website regarding a J1 trying to get this, you know, expedite scenario done.
Exception, yeah.
Sorry, exception
Yeah.
scenario. And I didn't see any information.
Yep, some embassy websites do not have that information. Others do. It's an embassy by embassy, but please know that even if it's not on the embassy or consulate website, this new exception for certain travelers does exist. It's on the Department of State website, so you should certainly pursue it.
Yeah, for J1s, F1s
J1s, F1s can board and come.
can board, correct now, but
J1s need to check, yeah.
So can I just jump in and add to that question that the student raised, that if you have a visa, then why can't you enter? And as Elsa says, the visa is issued by the Department of State, and the guidance that we got from the Immigration Service said that new incoming students should remain in their home countries to start their programs. And we're trying to figure out whether that should means that they must, or that's just a suggestion. So
Yes.
that's where the confusion is arising for students who have a visa and have a question about whether they can definitely enter the United States or not. So before we can say, give you any guarantees, we're trying to find clear guidance about whether new students can actually enter.
and adding to that note, which you mentioned earlier a little bit, the American Council on Education,
Yeah.
they wrote a very strong letter, a very good letter on July 22nd to the Department of Homeland Security. The letter was representing over 40 associations, over 10,000 or thousands, I should say, tens of thousands of schools, and over 1 million students, because we have, I don't know, at least 1.3 million students in the US from hundreds, well, 150 something countries at least. And the letter addressed all those issues that we are also very concerned about, that we've raised since March. For example, the issue of, you know, the transfer issue of someone who's in transfer right now in the SEVIS database are considered initial, not as continuing. And we feel strongly they should be considered as continuing students so that they don't have this issue about trying to enter the country if they still have a visa that was valid from a previous school, you know, and they kept the same SEVIS number. So these are all issues that are being addressed, but we're still waiting. I mean, we would love to give you more answers right now, but it's a tough one and we can't. And that's why we're trying to schedule more weekly webinars or town halls so we can address these issues. If the information's fresh, we'll give it to you fresh, and maybe you don't make send so many emails to us, and just hold off until we do the presentations and then keep you informed week by week, okay?
Okay, so here's a question. Have you heard of any new students being able or unable to enter the US recently?
Yeah.
So most of our new students have start dates of September 14th, and they're not technically allowed to enter the country until 30 days before that date. So we wouldn't have heard of anybody trying to enter at this point and being denied. We have heard through anecdotally that some students who are not Stanford students, who are returning students, are even having a little bit of trouble. So we are keeping an eye on that, and we're trying to think of solutions for our returning students, but for incoming students, no. Right,
Yeah,
you guys? Right.
Too early to know that, because
Too early to know.
F and Js can only enter the country 30 days before the start date
Right.
of their I-20s or DS-2019s.
Right.
So if students can't enter by the September 14th date, they know that they should be here by October 2nd. Will they need a new I-20 in that case?
Oh, that's $1 million question too. Well, here's the thing. You're dealing not only with the State Department that issued you the visa. The visa, think of it as a doorbell that lets you knock on the front door of the United States to enter the country. But it's the immigration official, Customs Border Protection official, that makes the decision whether they let you in or not. And in years past, we have seen students that are a week or too late be able to enter. They get a letter from their department If you're a grad student, you get a letter from the department and saying it's okay if they enter a week or so late. But we're in a different environment right now. So it's a hard question to answer. I can't tell you, yes, you have everything that they'll let you in. You know, in the past, we've said yes, that we've seen that pattern.
So then there's another question about rumors that Stanford may switch to an all online model. How would that impact international visas? Who wants to take that?
Yeah, well, you've heard the expression, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Right now, we're still walking. We haven't gotten to that bridge.
Yeah.
Right now, we are a hybrid institution. Could it change? You know, I think anything is game, as they say.
So if we do change, Rolando, then what will the impact be? So if we do go completely online, then it's still not clear to us whether students will be able to enter the US, even though you've all received an I-20, which says that we're a hybrid university.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so some of the advocacy work that it's being done is basically on that issue. What if we start as hybrid and then have to go online? And we may have to go online for reasons beyond our control,
Right.
related to the
We also have
pandemic.
to deal- Yeah, because we
So-
also have to deal with local county issues about staying open or not. But it's there's at least 250,000 students right now that are outside the United States. That combines both current students and new incoming students. And so this is a very important question that we're trying to see if the American Council on Education and all these other advocates that are putting pressure on Homeland Security to see if they give us some clarity and peace of mind for all of you on this issue. But we haven't gotten there yet, okay? It would be a big issue. We would have a town hall on this.
Yeah. So there's another question. If I can enroll remotely, will I have any regulation in using Stanford Library and other online resources?
I think you're welcome to use whatever resources Stanford can offer you. You're a Stanford student, you're part of our community. Yeah, that shouldn't be an issue.
Unless there's an issue about which country you're taking your classes from. There may be some restrictions
You're
related
right,
to,
but Iran might come to mind right now.
yeah, so we're not 100% sure, but there could be restrictions on some students, and we don't know who those might be yet.
Yeah.
Okay, Junko, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you ask the question. Sorry, I jumped in there.
Oh, no problem. So if the student already has a bank account outside the US, can they still receive the funding from the department or the university?
Yeah,
Still unknown, unclear.
Yeah.
The question is not just where the bank account is, but the question is whether you have permission in the country where you're working and what the tax risks might be for the university. So our tax office is looking at those issues, and you should be receiving some information soon.
Yeah, it's also a type of question that you could ask your department, but I think we're waiting for that issue clarification. What other?
There's groups of questions about CPT and different scenarios on summer CPT. Do you want to address that in general?
Yeah, let me tell you, F1 regulations stipulate that you could qualify for curricular practical training, that's CPT. It's a type of work permit. It's a benefit of you having maintained F1 status. So you don't gain F1 status until you're physically in the United States. So if you're a brand new student that has not entered the US, you don't start accruing time towards that benefit, okay? So if your question is, I'm starting online classes in fall quarter, will I qualify for CPT in the summer? Let's say in June of 2021, the answer is no, you will not qualify because you have not been enrolled in F1 status for an academic year, those 3 quarters. We did read a flexible interpretation of if a student was in the US in F1 status and then departed and couldn't enter and they'd been enrolled outside for the remainder quarters, would they qualify for CPT? And the Immigration Service said yes in that scenario, but that's not your question to me. Your question to me is, I've not entered the US, I'm gonna start on courses online. Will I qualify for CPT in June? The answer is no, not at this time. And I don't see it changing, by the way, because immigration law says it's a benefit of being in F1 status. And like I said earlier, you only gain F1 status upon entry to the US.
So the exception to that, Rolando, are graduate programs which
Right.
require
Those are-
CPT. And at this point, we know of a few. We know that the School of Education has a degree program that requires CPT immediately upon arrival, as does the GSB.
Yeah, the GSB, this is a brand new situation. And then I learned just the other day that the STEP program, the School of Education, I believe is not being held this year because of the complexity in dealing with all these issues. They actually did not accept or did not start a class for this year the way they normally do. So maybe the lone group might be the GSB, because only graduate students that will qualify for this if it's a mandatory part of the degree. But like we said, it's extremely rare, but yes, GSB, graduate school business students, will qualify for that. And the curriculum training is issued
And if you're a transfer student, who's already eligible for CPT, but they do remote learning from their home country in the fall, do they remain eligible for CPT?
That's a really good question.
So aren't they considered an initial status before?
Well, yes. Right now, you're considered an initial status, but then the question is, do they get credit for the previous years that they've been in F1 status? My quick response is going to be eventually, I think the answer is going to be yes for you, okay? Right now, look, you live in two worlds. You live in Access, the school world, the academic side of you, and you live in the immigration side in SEVIS world, Student Exchange Visitor Information System. In the SEVIS world, you were previously at the other school, let's say at Harvard, and Harvard released or let's rephrase this, because I'm going to get into detail. Harvard.
Don't go into too much detail, Rolando. We have a half hour and lots of questions.
They're going to ask me lots of questions on this one. Harvard releases your record to Stanford. If Stanford hasn't activated your record, you're in draft mode. If Stanford makes a Stanford I-20 says transfer from Harvard, you're in initial status. And in initial status, you cannot enter the country right now the way they're interpreting the rule. But eventually, we see you changing from initial status to active status. And in that case, I would say, yes, you will qualify for curricular training, let's say in June, okay? So there, I tried quickly.
Thank you.
Right.
Bravo.
There are still a lot of questions coming from transfer students. Are they able to enter that country? I know we briefly talked about it, but can you repeat it again?
This issue, you're in the SEVIS database, right now you're reflecting as an initial entry. Your I-20 on page 1 will say transfer pending from Harvard or somewhere, okay? But in the database, you're treated as initial. And our problem with students right now in that scenario being treated as initial is that we feel strongly that you're a continuing student, that you shouldn't be treated like someone not being denied entry to the US. But right now, Immigration Service wrote that stupid little sentence.
Yeah.
Pauline talked about that should remain outside the US. What does should mean must? And that's what we're trying to get clarity. And this letter from the American Council on Education dated July 22nd is putting pressure on Homeland Security and others to rethink the things that they're saying. Remember, these rules or these interpretations of regulations are not written by educators. They are written by people that are Homeland Security. They're protecting the US. That's their mentality. They're people that wear badges and guns, okay? And they're not educators. So this is why we're hitting walls with them, because they don't think the way we do or the way we'd like them to think, because they're more on the security side of things and not on the educational side, benefit side of things. So let's see if they progress and they come around to the type of logic that makes sense. But right now, it's a tough situation, the way we're answering your question right now, because we're trying to get more guidance, all right? All right, next question, please.
In terms of scheduling an expedited interview request, if the first request is denied, can they or should they reapply for the expedited request?
Elsa, you want to try that one?
Sure. I think as Shalini mentioned at the beginning, we can elaborate a little bit. We had a conversation with someone at the Department of State a couple of days ago who tried to describe the landscape that currently exists for many of the embassies and consulates around the world. They may very much want to honor your request for an expedited appointment or emergency appointment, but they may not be able to do it in the time that they have and the staff that they have available to them. So what happened when COVID first hit in March is that a lot of embassy and consulate staff were evacuated back to the United States. And in many countries, they have yet to return. So they've been operating with very limited staff. And that's why things are moving very slowly. And sometimes the services that they can offer are very limited. So you can try to apply for another expedited appointment, but you may not be successful. So I just wanted to tell you what it's like around the world. And some countries are operating almost at full throttle or getting up there because their COVID situation is under control and embassy staff have returned. And in many others, they may not be open at all or just have very limited ability to serve.
They do want to help you, believe me.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
they realize student visas are important, and they do like to prioritize those in general. But right now, like you said, they can't guarantee it because they're going to be slammed with requests also.
Right.
So
So I think a couple of questions here about the fee structure at Stanford, and somebody's asking whether that will change if Stanford goes fully online. And I'm sorry to tell you, but Stanford has no plans at this time to change that. So it's the same tuition. There's also a question there about whether a student who's planning to get here for the next quarter, should they still go ahead and apply for a visa using the current I-20? I would say yes, you should go ahead.
you have everything to gain by trying. Yeah, do it.
Just move forward with that process. We
Right.
recommend that.
You will not have to pay the SEVIS fee again. You will not have to worry about getting another visa later. Once it's valid for the duration of that period of time.
Okay, next,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, for the, based on the SEVIS number that it was issued for, I'm being real specific, okay? Anyway, go ahead.
Junko?
If the transfer student currently in the US, do they know when, whether or not they can move to campus? By when do they know?
You'd have to talk to, that's a housing question.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can tell you that if you're going to enroll, the other side of the question is we're going to issue another I-20 for you saying that transfer's been completed. In your case, your status, we're going to activate your status within a few weeks after the start date of your I-20. But the housing side of that question, you really need to talk to housing about that. Next question.
Student wants to know if it's possible that they can choose to start remotely because of all the mental stress dealing with the pandemic and the immigration situation.
So yes, they can decide to take their classes remotely, but if you've already signed a housing contract, you should check in to see whether they will make an exception for you. So if you have a visa and you've told the university you're coming, then they need to hear a really good reason why you've changed your mind, and they will consider it on an individual basis.
Shalini, is it all dependent on the program and the department? Should they check
That
with the
too.
department?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah.
So there are a
So
couple
some
of things that-
departments may require some in-person component. So
Yeah.
you should definitely circle back with your department. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah,
And
the
then
other
a
thing is
follow-up.
we would have to change the start date of that I-20.
Yes.
My colleague, we'll talk about this a little bit later, how we're going to get revised I-20s to you. If you don't start school by the scheduled date that had been agreed, we're going to have to issue another I-20. But logistically, we're already thinking of how to do that for you. Okay.
So as a follow-up to that, student also wants to know, do they have to have a visa in their passport to conduct their studies remotely?
No,
Does the I-20 have to be activated for them to conduct their
no.
studies remotely?
No.
The I-20 can only be activated once you're physically in the US and we know that you're in the US. This is the dangerous part because we have to figure out who of you are not coming or deciding not to come or can't come so that we don't make a mistake and activate your CVIS record. That's a big no-no. So we're designing something already, Qualtrics, that you will eventually tell us whether you're coming or not. And, but you don't have to be in F1 status to do distance learning. Okay.
Here's a $1 million question. Do you have any idea when we're gonna hear the clarification whether the initial students can come to the US or not?
None of us can really answer that. All we know is that we're all waiting, holding our breaths. So it's not, it's just not clear at this time. We will, you know, since we're going to be doing these webinars regularly, you will hear about it really soon as, just as soon as it happens.
Yep.
A student wants to know if they obtain their visa, but then defer their admissions to the following academic year. Will that shorten their OPT?
No, it won't. So what you're doing is not starting in September of this year, but let's say starting in September of next year. Junko, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're trying to consider if we can keep the same CVIS number, issue a new I-20 with a new September of next year start date. Then the student starts school or enters, let's say, 30 days before September of next year, and then they're enrolled 3 quarters. Then by the end of the 3rd quarter, they'll qualify for both CPT or OPT. Okay, because I'm assuming you're not doing a 9-month program. I'm assuming you're doing a several-year program. So you'll qualify for CPT once you've been in status in academic year. And if you were in a rare master's program, let's say an LLM program, Master's in Law and Legal Research, yeah, you'll finish in 9 months, you know, or just under 9 months. And then yes, if you entered the country in F1 status and 3 quarters later you graduated, you will qualify for post-OPT, optional practical training, and that would not be a problem. Okay.
All right. The next question is, what safety initiatives are in place for students if one moves to campus?
So they're going to be doing ongoing COVID testing. I guess that's the safety issue that you are referring to. So the university will have a really robust plan to make sure that students are tested, and those who test positively have a place where they can quarantine and be taken care of.
But initially, and correct me if I'm wrong, Shalini, but we heard yesterday that graduate students will be expected to quarantine upon
Yes.
arrival to Northern California. So
Yes.
You will have a 2-week quarantine.
And then ongoing testing after that
and
as
then
well.
ongoing testing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think I read that now we're not allowed to leave Northern California. We can still travel within Northern California, but if we go to Southern California, we have to self-quarantine
Yeah,
Sure.
well, in
coming
California,
back.
they like Southern California anyway, so.
Yeah.
So we won't go there.
I'm just going to jump in with a question here. Somebody said that if I cannot be paid remotely, can Stanford give me my back pay when I return to campus? And the answer to that is, we don't know. Best to check with your department. All right, Junko, over to you. Or Mario, or Sean.
Let's see. There's some confusion over the entry dates that the European embassies are giving to students. Apparently, there's some embassies that are saying that they can't enter until the start date on the I-20,
They
and
don't know.
others that are saying that they can enter within 30 days of the start date.
Yeah, okay, so they
It's
don't,
within 30 days.
it's
within
30 days. That's the
Yeah.
Code of Federal Relations. They know more about State Department rules, but this, they should have known that. You know, so don't worry, you can enter up to 30 days before the start date of your I-20 or the DS 2019.
Right. So DS 160 will ask you for the start date or when you're expected to arrive. And that should correspond to the start date on your I-20, but you can enter the country 30 days ahead.
Right. Right. Well, it's dumb for them to be saying that. I'll be blunt.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, don't worry.
So the following up to the quarantine issues, should the students plan to arrive 2 weeks earlier to the planned arriving day due to quarantine?
So our understanding is that all classes will also be available remote. So even if you enter just in time for classes to start, you will be able to begin your classes as long as your department allows you to do that. So best to check with your department.
For Canadian citizens who are not in Canada and entering the US from a non-Canadian country, are there any potential visa restrictions or entry restrictions for Canadians that are not entering from Canada?
I can't think of any.
I mean, if you're a Canadian citizen, then you should be able to enter, unless you're from a country that is part of the travel ban, COVID
Right.
travel ban area. And if you've been present in any of those countries like China, Brazil, or Iran, then you're going to have trouble getting into the country.
Correct. But, in general, you don't need a visa. You're not
Right.
required to have a visa in your passport. They're the only ones that are exempt from that requirement.
Yep.
So, yeah.
But yeah, check the travel restrictions for the country that you're in.
Right.
I believe we briefly mentioned, but the student is asking what is the latest date that students can enter the country after the start date of the quarter?
Well, that's a
October
two-part
2nd.
question. Yeah, October 2nd is a quick answer, but you also have to be allowed to enter by an immigration official wondering why didn't you arrive in time? And if you show your passport and the visa stamp was just issued 3-4 days ago or earlier, then you can say, I just got my visa. And then everything is self-explanatory to them.
Yeah, you should also inform your department that you won't be able to be here on September 14th when the classes begin, and make sure that it's okay that you enter by
Right.
October 2nd.
Exactly.
And also there may be a separate process in place after you arrive for the first time using your F1 status in order to let us know that maybe you have arrived, therefore we can activate your record for you. Because we need to activate your record, I believe, before October 2nd as well. So you need to enter and then let us know that you've arrived. Otherwise, we'll assume that you're not here, and therefore we may not activate your record and you may fall out of status.
Is there a potential for denial of entry from a country that's not on the COVID travel ban list?
Yes. Elsa, do you want to talk about that one scenario you mentioned before?
Which one, Rolando?
Is it a Chinese student that went to?
So the student is not a citizen of a country that's on the COVID travel ban list?
And would be traveling to the United States and seeking entry from a country that is not on the COVID travel ban.
Yes. Is there a potential that they could still be denied entry or face problems entering the US?
Nothing's impossible, but the chances are very, very low. If all the paperwork is in order, valid visa stamp, I-20 that's valid, and I mean, I can't think of a reason why they'd be denied entry. So I would say it would be a sort of an exception to the rule if they were denied entry. But again, unfortunately, our border control has unlimited power to deny anyone entry into the United States. So we can never say with absolute certainty that anyone will be granted entry, but the chances are incredibly small that you'd be denied. Yeah.
If you had to choose a port of entry, I would definitely suggest San Francisco.
San Francisco and Boston are known as the two best places to enter in the United States for international. So
But they're not going to
plan
Harvard.
your trip around that. Yeah.
And the officer, Customs Border Protection officer, has a lot of power at the time of entry. They don't deny you like immediately. If they have questions, they're going to send you to secondary inspection because the airplane just deplaned and there's a bunch of people waiting. They'll send you to secondary inspection, and then you could be there 15 minutes or 5 hours waiting to talk to somebody. And then just be honest and just tell them the situation, and you have all the pieces of the puzzle, so they should let you into the United States. Okay.
So I'm going to jump in quickly here. I see a lot of questions about funding and tuition reduction. So all questions about funding should be directed to the department, because departments are making those decisions about how they're going to pay students and if they can pay students. So reach out to your departments. What was the other thing I said?
About
Tuition waivers. Once again, you need to talk to your departments about any money matters. But you should know that Stanford has made a decision to not reduce the tuition because of this situation.
So there's a
Over to
question
you.
in the chat.
Sorry?
So there's a question in the chat. So even if I enroll in Stanford online this quarter from outside the US, and I'm able to enter the US, which is next quarter, my F1 status only begins next quarter, and in order to maintain it, I have to do winter, spring, and summer quarter consecutively. Is that correct?
You're expected, if you enrolled distance learning fall quarter and you come in winter quarter, then you would be enrolled winter quarter and spring, and you'll be okay not enrolling in the summer.
And this applies only to graduate students. I don't know if this question comes from a graduate student or an undergraduate student.
I'm assuming it's a grad student, but
But if it's a graduate student, then you should know that you should be able to take the summer quarter off, because for you, you need to be enrolled in,
it's okay to be enrolled winter and spring and not be enrolled in the summer in your scenario. But if you wanted to do CPT part-time the following school year, then you'd have to be enrolled full-time in the summer, but it's not required for you to be enrolled full-time. So you could take summer technically off. That's the way we're interpreting the rule about when you have to be enrolled for graduate students, okay? So if you don't want to enroll in the summer and you're not doing any employment, you could do on-campus employment, by the way, but you could not work off campus. But other than that, it's your call, your decision.
Rolando, would you mind talking briefly about the enrollment hold removal process?
Oh, I was going to ask you to do that.
Yeah, Junko, you go for it.
Yeah, go for it. Look, let me just say briefly, there's an enrollment hold called an ENR, or enrollment 31 hold, that all incoming students have. And traditionally, the reason we place that hold is because we used to have all these wonderful maintaining your legal status sessions. We'd have over 30, okay, during August through September. And then you would enter the US, attend one of the sessions, and we would remove the hold after we physically saw you at the session. Well, guess what? COVID has changed everything for us. And we're now doing this new system that we're literally going to be putting in place in August, and which will help us know whether, look, we're going to remove the hold anyway, but we got to know who we're not supposed to, whose records we're not supposed to activate in SEVIS. So Junko, can you talk about the Qualtrics or that scenario of what we're thinking about?
Sure. Yeah, so every new student is going to receive an email from us, probably mid-August, asking you to enter your plan, whether you are currently in the US, you are outside the US but plan to enter the US, or you decide to enroll remotely for the fall, or you decide to defer until later quarter. We ask everyone to respond to the email and then complete the survey, the form. Once we receive the information, then we will send you a link to STARS training, which basically talks about how you can maintain your legal status once you get to the United States. Once you complete the STARS training, we will go ahead and remove your enrollment hold. but we will send you information with the instruction again sometime in August.
Yeah, we know you're anxious to enroll. You will be able to enroll, don't worry.
Well, I think they can't enroll in courses until
Right.
September 1st.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, you'll have plenty of time to get your enrollment hold released.
Yeah.
I heard you speak blurry in a blurring language. It's September 1st, right? That
Yes.
Is-
Yeah,
September
except
1st.
for a few professional schools. I
Right.
think
It-
medical school has a different start date for the
Medical school.
access
Law school
enrollment.
and GSB, I think, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, right. Okay, what's another question? It's 10 till 10.
I have a student who had applied for an expedited appointment about a month ago and was rejected. The embassy only allows to apply once for an expedited appointment. And now their appointment is scheduled for October 8th. All right, do we have any suggestions for that student?
That's a tough
Yeah.
situation.
We'd say come and consider that you'll be able to enter the US in time for the winter quarter and not the fall, unfortunately.
So a PhD student who received an I-20 for 7 years, but received the department expedited letter request for 5, indicating that the degree takes 5 years, not 7 years.
Yeah,
I would suggest the student talk to the department and ask the department to match
yeah, they
the
might.
I-20.
Yeah, that's a good question. So here's what happens. PhD students, you guys don't know when you're going to graduate, okay? Even 2 quarters before you're going to graduate, you don't know that. I'm being sarcastic, but the reality is that our office is the ones responsible for issuing the initial I-20 and the length of time it's issued for. We decided over a year ago to issue the I-20s for 7 years based on an academic year budget. Now the department's saying, well, you should be able to finish in 5, okay? I don't think the department's going to be willing to switch their letter to 7, because sometimes, especially if you're PhD students, they feel that if they say 7, they have to give you money for the 6th and 7th year. Now, will they give you money for those years? Well, if you're making progress towards the degree and if they have the money, chances are that they probably will still give you some money. Plus, by the time you get to the 5th or 6th year, your tuition might be also a reduced tuition. So, but will the department write a letter for 7? We're not asking them to write a letter for you for 7. If they only feel comfortable writing a letter for 5, that's where it stays, okay? Just let them know that it's an internal decision within Stanford to issue the document for 7, because we had seen a pattern of students across a lot of degrees taking longer than 5 years. So it's much easier to issue a document from the very beginning for a longer period of time, okay? That's as best as I can answer you.
Okay, here's another question. Please talk about the 20 hours a week employment rule. Sent multiple questions regarding that. And so we can address both the things about the 20 hours a week and the multiple questions. So who wants to take the 20 hours a week question?
I'll do that.
Okay.
As an F1 student or J1 student, you're able to work up to 20 hours a week once you're here in the United States.
I think this is a question for somebody who may not be in the United States, and the university is still telling them that they should work no more than 20 hours a week.
Yeah, well, this is where you're not in F1 status. You're not subject to the F1 regulations to work only 20 hours a week, but there's Stanford policy and rules that also dictate how much you're able to work during the academic year. So whatever the department says, you need to listen to them on this. And so if the department's saying you can only work 20 hours a week, then that's what it is. But that's it. Federal law says 20 hours a week if you were in F1 status, but you're not in F1 status. But if the department's saying you're not in the US, we don't want you to work more than 20, then that's it. Because the reason is you're primarily a student, remember that. Okay, so you gotta focus.
There's also a request for an FAQ with all this information, and I think that's a really good suggestion. I know we had an FAQ that we put on our website a while ago, but we need to continue to work on that and update the information as it becomes available. So we'll be working on that and have a more timely FAQ for you.
That is a very good question, but part of the problem with doing an FAQ is that if we've learned something in between the FAQ and the FAQ is being vetted, by some other colleagues before we post it on the web. We can't turn it around fast enough.
We'll look to find a good resolution to that issue. But yes, we do recognize that you're looking for something in writing from us.
Yep.
Okay.
I just wanted to remind everyone that if you like to listen to this town hall meeting again later on, you can go to our website. There is a recordings of the previous town halls, and you should be able to listen to today's and also the previous town hall meetings.
And there's somebody who says that I can share my notes if you'd like, which is great if you have notes to share them. So my question now is for all of us on the Bechtel team. What shall we do with all the questions that we have not been able to answer so far? Because we haven't got to all of them. And I know that must be really frustrating for people. So how do we have a strategy to answer at least as many as we can in a different format?
Well,
So one avenue for students to get their questions answered would be our afternoon advising, which we're still offering through Zoom from 1 to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday.
The waiting time for that can be pretty long, right?
So the best way to go about being seen by an advisor in the afternoon is to click on the Zoom link, which is on the About Us section of our website under the appointment page. Is about 15 to 30 minutes before 1 o'clock. And waiting times do vary. So you could be seen as quickly as 2 minutes, or you might be waiting 2.5 hours to speak with an advisor. But that would be one avenue. In terms of emails, once you send us an email, we ask that you wait for a response, because if you send a follow-up before we can respond, that actually chains your emails together and it gets bumped up to the most recently sent email. So that actually delays our ability to be able to respond to you in a timely manner. And we are receiving a high volume of emails, so it is taking us longer to respond to emails.
So what on average would you say, Mario? How long on average?
The email response time?
Yeah, so people know how long to be patient.
At this point, I would say it's 4 to 5 business days.
Okay, great.
And we ask students to include the student ID number.
Yeah.
That's the number 05 or 06. It's important because then we go look at your record, because you might not give us a detailed enough question. Yeah, but again, I want to remind everybody before we go off in 3 minutes, just be patient, be resilient, and be safe, because we've been slammed with tons and tons of questions, and you don't only just ask one question, you ask 3 to 10 questions. So, but we want to have these town halls to be able to give you the latest information. So please don't be making an appointment to talk to me and then also go to the Zoom. Just, if you make an appointment, great, just bear with us on that. I also do have appointments. My appointments get booked very quickly, but I may have, 15 to 20 appointments a week easily that I communicate with students. And so, like I said, just be patient. If there's anything that's super new, important news, we will send an email to you all and let you know the latest, and maybe even do a quick webinar. And if you miss the webinar because the time difference is quite a bit, then you can always listen to the recording. Okay, so just be patient, please.
So I'm going to see if I can save all the questions that we've received. And if we do have that FAQ soon, we can try and answer some of them. Is there a good way to capture all these FAQs, folks, other than copying and pasting? Can somebody help me with that?
Sean, you know any other way? You got mute on.
I'm not sure. I know that when I eventually save the recording, there'll be a separate text file generated of all the chats.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there'll be a separate for the Q&A as well.
There's a transcript created, right, from the recording.
Yeah, there is, but my question is about the questions that we have not been able to answer yet, and I thought we could use them and answer them in some format. But we'll look into that.
Yeah.
We will, but I can tell you that from the type of questions we just answered, the ones you've asked right now have definitely been the most important ones, the most urgent ones for us to answer. And we've done that in the past too, in previous recordings. So if something wasn't asked or we didn't answer a question, I'm assuming it's not a super dire, important one, but we will try to somehow get to it. Okay.
Okay. All
Okay.
right, folks, I think we're at 10 o'clock and we're all off to our other meetings.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hope to see you again next week. Stay well.
Stay healthy and safe.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.